Time structure of the writing, review and publication process by Vanna Boffo, Nicoletta Tomei, Deborah Daddi, Letizia Gamberi. The importance of the academic writing in adult education. Thinking about a research paper. Why is it important to know how to think about a good scientific paper? Where do you dig for a research idea? The research idea comes from the content of the comparative group of the winter school. You can choose the focus depending on content, methods, structure. The workflow of the review process. Author submits article, then article assessed by editor, then sent to reviewers, then reviews assessed by editor, and then further review needed. In advance, you can say a more specific details on the workflow of the review process. Now, steps to take before submitting your academic writing. Choose the journal that best fits your work. Some questions to ask yourself before proposing a publication to a publishing outlet. 1. Are you submitting your research to a trusted journal? 2. Is it the right journal for your work? 3. What are the main goals and scope of the journal? 4. How is the scientific board composed? 5. Does it publish call for paper? How often? 6. What are the procedures and times for submission? 7. What is the review process? How long is it? What are the review criteria? Usually, authors are recommended to check the following aspects before submitting. 1. Domain relevance article or journal. 2. Respect for the code of ethics, work authenticity, data processing in compliance with privacy and national and international standards. Adequate recognition of all authors. 3. Sending the article to only one journal at a time. 4. Adequacy of formal aspects, names of authors, affiliations, abstract, length, figures, tables, bibliographic rules. 5. Grammatical and lexical correctness. Guideline. Generally, publishers publish accurate guidelines on their website for authors and reviewers. It is very important to read the guidelines carefully. Guidelines could contain this kind of information. Elements that article must include: formatting and length criteria, stylistic criteria. Some journals ask to list the essential aspects and elements of originality of the work. Highlights what the work adds to current research in the sector. For authors' guidelines, see, for example, New Directions for Adult and Continuing Education, Taylor and Francis, Elsevier, or Formare Journal. In summary, think, check, and submit. After this preliminary, you must answer these questions. Does the manuscript fit the journal's scope and aim, and will it be of interest to the readership? Is the manuscript of minimum acceptable quality? Is the content and writing good enough to make it worth reviewing? Is the manuscript compliant with the journal's instructions for authors?
In the slide, you can see the workflow of the review process. The process starts with the submission of academic writing and ends with the publication of it. Let's see the fourth phase of the review process, the submission of academic writing. Journals regularly publish call for papers. In general, there is a specific period for sending academic writing to the journal. You must respect this deadline. The second phase of the review process is when the article is assessed by the editor. The publisher reviews the academic writing and decides whether to accept or reject it. If the editor accepts, academic writing begins the peer review process. But if the academic writing is refused, the editor can provide indications regarding the reasons, but it does not always happen. If explanations of the refusal are given, the author will be invited to follow them in order to resubmit the academic writing on the next call. Why could an academic paper be rejected by the editor? Take time to understand why your paper has been rejected. If a journal rejects your manuscript, it may be for many reasons. Make sure that you understand why your academic writing has been rejected, so that you can learn from the experience. This is especially important if you plan to submit the same article to a different journal. Some of the common reasons manuscripts are rejected include: 1. The author has submitted his academic writing to the wrong journal. It doesn't fit the aims and scope or fails to engage with issues addressed by the journal. Second, the manuscript is not a true journal article. For instance, it is too journalistic or a thesis chapter. 3. The manuscript is too long or too short. 4. There is poor regarding on the journal's conventions or for academic writing in general. 5. Poor style, grammar, punctuation, or English throughout the manuscript. 6. The manuscript does not make any new contribution to the subject. 7. The research has not been properly contextualized. 8. The research is based on a poor theoretical framework. 9. The manuscript is poorly presented. And 10. The manuscript is libellous or unethical. After the acceptance, the editor sends the academic writing to the reviewers. The length of the review process depends on the journal, the tasks, and the period. Generally, a minimum of 2 peer reviewers, up to 6, are chosen for the peer review. Peer reviewers are ideally experts in their field. Journals usually build a pool of peer reviewers that have a good track record of producing high-quality reviews. Reviewers are encouraged to take into account specific guidelines that usually contain suggestions on both line of conduct and evaluation criteria for articles.
Peer review is a process aiming at evaluating the originality, the quality, and the robustness of manuscript for publication. The key point of this approach is the safeguard of the academic research integrity and the improvedness of paper quality. For publisher, the peer review process is essential to screen the content for publication and to ensure that only top-level articles will be disseminated. Peer review should add value to a research work through the constructive dialogue with reviewers and authors, aiming to improving the robustness of authors' work. There are 3 most common types of peer review: single blind, in which name of reviewers are not revealed to authors, double blind, in which name of reviewers and authors are not revealed to each other, and open peer review, in which authors and reviewer can be in direct contact. When a peer reviewer evaluates a work, he usually uses common peer review criteria. First, he evaluates how much your paper fit or match with the journal topic and how it is formatted. He also gives you a feedback about originality, innovation, and importance of your study. Peer reviewers are usually asked to evaluate organization, readability, and language of a paper, and also consistency and relevancy of literary review. As experts in the field, peer reviewers give you advice about study design, methods, analysis and funding section of your work, but also study conclusion, limitation, and future direction of research. In doing so, they are really a great support for valid article selection to be indexed and open access, but also they help editor-in-chief decide whether to accept or reject a manuscript. Some advice to survive peer review can be the following. Accept feedback as a learning experience. Remember that very few submissions are accepted unconditionally. Understand that editors and reviewers are trying to help you improve your paper. Seek help with language and statistics if you need. And remember that persistence pays off. Answer quickly to question and revision. The peer review is completed once all reviewers send to the journal a detailed report with their comments and their recommendation. The journal editor or the editorial board consider the feedback provided by the peer review and arrive to a decision. The following are the most common decisions that are made. Accept without any changes. It's very rare. Accept with minor revision, in which journal decide to publish the paper, asking you some small correction. Acceptance after major revision, most common for a young researcher. The journal will publish the paper, asking to the authors to make changes suggested by the reviewers or the editors. Revise and submit. It's a conditional rejection. The journal is willing to consider the paper in another round of decision making after the authors make major changes. Reject the paper. It happens when the journal decides not to publish the paper or reconsider it, even if the editor makes major revision. After the peer review and the editor final decision, if the academic writing is accepted with revision, research have to find time to revise their academic writing. The author modifies the paper according to the reviewer's suggestion or rebuts any comments with which she or he disagrees. In case of major revision, the revised manuscript may undergo a second round of peer review. When only minor changes are requested, both follow-up review and final check are handled by the associate section or section editor. If the paper is fine, the academic writing is sent to the editor's press. It is necessary to respect internal and external review. In general, this type of review is double-blinded. If your review is accepted, it will be possible to publish your paper. And this is what we wish you thank you for your attention.